So Jared Anderson was taking the 10-round distance for the second time in his career last night by Ryad Merhy. Anderson won every single round, just about, and the fight, if you can call it that, more closely resembled a sparring session. Now, Anderson tried his best to get Merhy out of there, but it turns out that Merhy's one of these fighters who has mastered the art of survival. He looks like the kind of guy that has been touring all the pro gyms as a sparring partner for years. I don't know that to be the case, but that's what he looks like to me, based upon this performance. Because as negative as it was, being able to last the 10-round distance against a fighter as active, as youthful, and as powerful as Jared Anderson when he's letting his hands go is far more difficult than Ryad Merhy made it look. Those types of defensive survival skills are developed usually over the course of many years in the boxing gyms sparring with top pros. Ryad Merhy was also listed by ESPN at 5'9". This is a couple of inches shorter than what he's listed at on BoxRec, which is 5'11". And in fact, I could have sworn that BoxRec had him listed at over 6 foot previously. They've now revised it down to 5'11". But as I say, ESPN had him listed at 5'9", which is obviously very, very short for a heavyweight. And that can make it awkward if you're not used to fighting somebody that short. Jared Anderson is 6'4". When I was watching the fight, I was talking to Boxing on the Edge in my Element group, shout out to him. And I was telling him that Merhy reminded me of an American heavyweight called Joey DeWaco. Very similar stature, short, chunky guy who's very cute defensively. Doesn't offer much by way of offense, but he knows how to survive in there. He goes into fights in this sparring partner survival mode, and he makes it extremely difficult for you to hit him clean. And again, from a fan perspective, it's terribly frustrating to watch, and it's frustrating for the opponent, obviously. But from the perspective of someone who's actually boxed, as soporific as it was, even for me, I couldn't help but be impressed by the defensive abilities of Merhy. Because again, he made it look easy to avoid most of Jared Anderson's big shots. Trust me, it's not. It's way more difficult than he was making it look. Merhy had the old wily veteran moves in there, the career sparring partner moves. Now, Merhy has been stopped previously in his career, and that was by Arsen Gulamarian down at cruiserweight. But that was 6 years ago. I'm going to assume in that past 6 years, Merhy's really been perfecting his survival skills. And so on paper, people are going to look at this result and say, wow, this was a poor performance by Jared Anderson. But having watched the fight, I don't think it was. Again, he won every round just about. He was never in any danger. He just struggled to open the guy up. And when you're in there with someone who's being as negative as that, and he knows how to defend himself from punches, tuck up tight, and he's real awkward, and he throws just enough sneaky counters back to prevent you from just walking straight in with reckless abandon. When you come up against a guy like that, it's not as straightforward to get him out of there as the average observer might think. I remember when Lennox Lewis fought a guy called Levi Billups back in the days. Now, Levi Billups wasn't as skilled defensively as Ryad Merhy or Joey DeWaco, but he was kind of awkward, and he was a short guy, and the fight he had with Lewis was much better than this fight between Anderson and Merhy. But there were some similarities with that Lennox Lewis-Levi Billups fight and this fight with Jared Anderson, because Lewis couldn't quite get to grips with Levi Billups. He found him awkward, he found his rhythm really difficult to read, found him difficult to time, and Lennox Lewis actually had some issues in that fight. Bear in mind, Levi Billups was a journeyman. He wasn't some top contender or something. He was a journeyman, and he was landing plenty of punches on Lennox Lewis. I think he cut him in the fight. Lewis's face was kind of swollen afterwards. Subsequent to that, Levi Billups was knocked out in, I think it was 1 or 2 rounds by Corey Sanders, just to add some context. But yeah, Lewis just couldn't get to grips with him. But a few fights later, he's knocking out Razor Ruddock in 2 rounds. Styles make fights. So I don't think it was a bad performance by Jared Anderson. He's a green fighter on the come up. He'll learn from it. More than anything, I think it turned out to be bad matchmaking by Bob Arum. And I'm not having a go at Arum. You know, you can't get it right every time. An antiseptic fight like that is obviously not going to benefit Arum in any way. The crowd were booing throughout. But Arum, like myself, to be honest, underestimated how crafty Merhy would be defensively and how survival-minded he would be. If he's going to put Anderson in with this level of opponent moving forward, it needs to be someone who is more aggressive and or less defensively astute. Personally, I think a rematch with Charles Martin might be the way to go. because Bob Arum had a certain roadmap for Jared Anderson before that fight and a pace that he wanted to move him at in his career. But after the fight, Bob Arum spoke openly about the fact that he wanted to pump the brakes a bit with Jared Anderson. He didn't deal with Charles Martin as comfortably as Arum would have hoped. He felt that his fighter needed more seasoning. Well, Anderson's had another fight since. He's got a new assistant coach. I'd say he should run it back with Martin, if not next, then the fight after that, to see whether he's progressed. Eddie Hearn did that, for example, with Conor Benn. He fought that Frenchman and went life and death first time around, but several fights later, they put him back in with the same guy, and Conor Benn dealt with him much more comfortably. If you want to go further back than that, Sergey Kovalev went life and death with Darnell Boone, got dropped in that fight, but a few fights later, they had a rematch, and Kovalev dealt with Boone comfortably. So that's what I think they should do with Anderson. And if he deals with Charles Martin comfortably next time, then he can kick on to start fighting some top 10 contenders. In fact, Arum could match him with one of his other top-ranked heavyweights, Efe Ajagba, who fought on the undercard. Because generally, contenders only tend to take 50-50 fights in 3 scenarios. Number 1, if there's a load of money on the table, an offer that's too good to refuse. Number 2, if it's an elimination match where they get a high ranking or a title shot if they win. And number 3, if it's an in-house fight where no matter who wins, the promoter wins because he's got both fighters under contract. Outside of those 3 scenarios, contenders don't tend to take 50-50s that often. And so, like I say, an Efe Ajagba fight might make sense 1 or 2 fights down the line with Jared Anderson because he's a top-ranked fighter as well. If they can make it as some type of ranking match, some type of eliminator, I don't mean final eliminator, just a standard eliminator where the winner gets a particular ranking afterwards and one of those little trinket belts. That might entice the 2 guys to agree to it. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about Jared Anderson's performance against Ryad Merhy, how you'd like to see his career handled moving forward, who you think he should fight in his next couple, and how you think he's going to do. Personally, I think Anderson's got a lot of talent, but he seems stubborn, doesn't like to listen, and also emotionally unstable. And that's a concern, obviously. Anyway, I'll leave it there.